off. So our first presentation, as I mentioned, is New and Next, presented by our General Manager, Brad Hopper, who looks like he's coming in right now. There he is. So anyways, Brad, let me hand things over to you.
Thank you, Brendan. It is fantastic that all of you have joined us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Really excited to have you here. We have a bunch of great content to share with you. And let me just jump right into it. I will share my screen and then move to the presentation mode. There we go. So let me know if you're not seeing this. So this is the New and Next presentation. Once again, my name is Brad Hopper. I'm the GM of the business. And we're going to talk about a couple of things. Number one, as Brendan just alluded to, we will talk a little bit about your votes from last year and then talk about how we're going to be doing some voting later on in the day this year. And then I'll move into the formal kind of content for this particular presentation. So last year, we did something a little bit different. Normally, what we do is have a list of features, favorite features that we get your votes on, and we tally those votes and be sure to include that in the prioritization process. Last year, instead of a long list of features, we presented 3 big themes that we were interested to know which of these do you think is the most important for Quantrix to focus on. And we looked at the modern user experience. We looked at some examples of modern BI technology, some other modern tools and IDEs and so on. We talked about dynamic aggregation. And then we also talked about AI-driven modeling. You can see in the green font here, and I also labeled it, the modern user experience was the winner. However, it was pretty close. It was actually, it won by 2 votes, I think, or something along those lines. And then subsequent to the user conference, we had some other customer conversations with folks who hadn't been able to attend, and actually it became a tie at the end. But that's okay, because my personal favorite was also modern user experience. So I broke the tie, and we did some work on the modern user experience this year, and we'll show you a little bit of that in this session. Now, on the concept here of AI-driven modeling, I thought that was very interesting because this one was more or less dead last. Among the people attending last year, there was very little interest compared to the other topics in the idea of using AI in Quantrix, and that may still be true. But if you recall, we had our conference last year, I think it was the second week in November, maybe around the same time that we're doing it this year. Later that month, how many of you will recognize the name ChatGPT? Just broke onto the scene like crazy. There was this incredible explosion of interest in AI. And so I want to just say a couple of words about that because we're still interested in this concept and we think that it's possible that you may have a renewed interest. And so let me just say a couple of words about that. So before I do that, however, I want to put that QR code up on the screen again. As Brendan said, we're going to be giving you all an opportunity to enter in some features that you would like to request. And if you go to this link, you'll have a place to put in 3 different features that are your favorites that you want to put on the list for others to vote on. At the end of not the end of the day, but at the end of our show this afternoon, our time, we will consolidate the ideas that you have entered in with a list that we've prepared ahead of time of about 10 or so features. We've kind of seeded the list and we'll add your ideas to that list. And then we'll all go visit a different link where you'll see that list in all its glory and you can add your votes to that list. We'll give you more instructions when we get there. Okay, so I think probably we've posted this in the chat as well so that you have a chance to go look there. So with respect to AI, I'm just going to say, this is my personal belief, and I think others in the organization, not necessarily all, but others in the organization really do believe that the current approach to AI will change how we interact with technology more or less forever, starting now and going on into the future. There's been, as I said earlier, an amazing kind of explosion of interest and creativity around AI. I do want to point out, though, as a kind of student of machine learning and data science myself, although not an expert, I've been in and around this area for multiple decades now. This is not a revolution. It is really an evolution, although it's a very fast-moving evolution. It's kind of speeding up now considerably. And the reason for that is, I mean, we've had neural networks and other sorts of machine learning and reinforcement learning kinds of technologies, deep learning, around for a long time. They have obviously evolved technically in terms of the way the ML itself works. But alongside of that, we've had this incredible explosion of user data on the web, and also the incredible ability of certain parties to gain access to, or to take, I don't know what the right word is, take ownership or take stewardship, hopefully, better word, of that data to score those models and make them smarter and smarter and smarter. So that has resulted in a somewhat, you might say, exponential increase in the capability that we see coming from those models, which is really cool to watch. Now, I will say, though, that just like other technological kind of booms, I could give the example of IoT or edge computing. There's this initial explosion, then there's a kind of like lapse in the enthusiasm, and then things eventually become just another tool in the toolbox. And I think the same thing will happen with AI. It will become something that all of us use, and hopefully for the better, making folks able to use their own expertise, but magnified by some of the, the world's knowledge and capability generally, and also maybe specifically in a particular area where you might happen to be looking and working. Now, we do have some concerns about intellectual property, like some of you might have. Where's that data being sourced from? Is it being sourced with the agreement of the people who created that intellectual property? I kind of alluded to this earlier, that some of the largest companies in the world are putting out these AIs, and so there's some concerns about monopolistic practices. Having said all of that, if AI can help make your Quantrix experience better, we're very interested. If it could be more powerful, easier, faster, able to read your mind a little bit more about what you're actually trying to do in the software, we're all in. We have a commitment to doing the right thing with your data, but we want to take advantage of new technologies as they come along. There's a new one every day, ChatGPT, Llama, Bard. That's just the top kind of 3 major flavors that I could name off here. So it's good for us and perhaps for you to experiment with these technologies, but we don't really necessarily want to settle on one today, because there's a new one literally every day, new approaches, new evolution of this thinking. So we're going to do some checking around, some investigation, and we'd love to get your feedback. And maybe if you are interested in this, put some comments in the chat box there. How would you use AI in Quantrix going forward? Are there particular things that you've thought of based on all of the hoopla about ChatGPT that made you think, I wonder if I could use this in my agile modeling experience? We suggested some ideas around semantic search, the creation of content through chat or through text entries, taking actions in the application through text or chat. If you have other ideas, we would love to hear about those. Now, let's move on to the actual content here. I only have 30 minutes for this session, so I've already been blabbing a little too much. What's new and next? So I want to give you a list of the awesome capabilities that we have worked on and either delivered already this year or will deliver before the end of the year. In fact, just a couple of weeks out, we're expecting our 23.3 release. A lot of the things that you see on this list here are actually kind of infrastructure, or at least they're not front and center user things that you'll interact with. For example, dramatic improvements to the performance of canvases specifically. And when you have a canvas that has lots and lots of objects on it, we're going to paint that canvas much faster. We've made significant investments there, and you should be experiencing those benefits if you have complex canvases in your models that you're using on cloud. We made some investments in the way that we store data, and particularly taking advantage of some kind of awesome techniques that came from some members of our team to store Boolean data more efficiently. What's Boolean data? It's true false data. Why do you care about that? I'll say something more about that in the roadmap session when we have a little bit more time to talk about it. But trust me, this is going to be an interesting and powerful thing for you going forward. And some of these investments in the kind of infrastructure that we're making will help with that. We've added what we call cloud domain hints. So we released single sign-on, of course, as you probably know, and then an augmentation of that is called a domain hint. which means that you can create URLs that suggest to the single sign-in provider that this user is already in another application that is known. And so that way, when you want to link multiple applications together, for example, some of our partners are doing this, where they have Quantrix models, and then they have their own application or their own portal, we can reduce the amount of asking for passwords, use the same password through this shared SSO, but also don't ask for it again when you move to a particular kind of URL that's linked there that embeds a so-called cloud domain hint. So this is pretty cool. Another thing that you won't see, but you will benefit from and you will enjoy, not being asked over and over again to put your password in again. So I didn't rearrange these properly. I'll skip to the next one here. Word wrap is something that we released already this year. Awesome capabilities there to make data a bit more readable and not hide things, especially for some of our customers for whom PDFs and printouts are super important. If you have not all the data showing and then you print it out, and if that's your record of record, if that's your document of record, then you might not see all of the data that's supposed to be there, and word wrap can help with that quite a bit. The Boolean checkbox, kind of back with the Boolean data memory efficiency, we made it easier for users to put really nice looking checkboxes in matrices and also on the canvas so that your users can interact with applications and choose and unchoose things in a lot of different kinds of ways that are aligned to the way that you want your application to work. We have had Salesforce in the bucket for quite a long time. We added write back to Salesforce, and we also added the ability to write back only the changed cells and allow you to track which cells have changed in a Salesforce connection and to write only those back to increase the performance of write back. So then the coordinated universal time, that's kind of a mouthful. Most people know it as UTC. This is the actually pretty huge feature that we have not yet released, but will be coming in the 23.3 release. And that is that when you create dates in Quantrix, we will record them as so-called universal time, which means that we will know if you look in a different time zone, you will not be able to make subtractions across dates and see actually how many hours transpired. This is particularly interesting for some of our customers who operate across geographic zones, and even interesting perhaps if you are looking into troubleshooting and looking at logs and you want to know, well, who did this and at what time, and you might want to know precisely the time. So you would not believe how much effort went into adding a completely new data type into Quantrix, both in Quantrix Modeler and in the cloud, to accomplish this UTC functionality. And I want to make a special shout out to our colleague, Brian Cabana, who did the lion's share of this work. And he created all of the tickets. I want to say there were probably 50 plus tickets in all of the engineering work that went into UTC. So I want to acknowledge Brian and say that I'm personally very grateful, and the organization is grateful for your dedication there on UTC. So normally I would demonstrate some of these things. I'm not going to demonstrate any of this. We will see a whole session on Salesforce from Lindsay in upcoming, and the reason is because I want to spend all of the remaining demo time on something completely new. Now, this may or may not be a surprise to you because we did mention this last year at the user conference. This year, 2023, is actually the 20th anniversary of Quantrix. And the company was founded in 2002, and the first version of Quantrix was released in 2003. And I want to say Brian's name again because Brian was there for the first release of Quantrix, and and he has recently celebrated his 20th anniversary with the company. So it's all about you, Brian, today. Thank you and congratulations. And I want to say thank you for your partnership, not only to Brian and the Quantrix team, but to you, our customers, who have helped Quantrix to evolve and survive, sustain, and grow. And hopefully we've helped you in your planning and modeling tasks, as long as you've been a customer. Some of you have been a customer for almost that long, and others of you have just joined us. Now then, I want to you might be wondering, what is this crazy little symbol here? This is the so-called sparkle symbol. And I'm just teasing you a little bit because what I want to show you next is that new user interface. So we are introducing something that we call Quantrix Labs. Quantrix Labs is a venue through which, a setting that you can change in Quantrix, through which you can experience functionality from Quantrix that is not yet released, but that we are very interested in your feedback on. And the very first set of capabilities that we're releasing via Quantrix Labs is what we've been calling our new UX, or experimental UX. And I'm going to show you that right now. Let me get over here to Quantrix. So if you are a longtime Quantrix user, you will be very familiar with the Quantrix launch panel. And what I'm going to do is open, actually, I can probably just do this from here. I'm going to open the settings. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and open a new model first and just let you take a gander at Quantrix. So this is the classic Quantrix view that you've seen for so many years. What I want to do now is go to Tools, Settings, and then I want to point out to you this new setting here called Quantrix Labs. So when the 23.3 release comes out, this setting will be in your application, and you can go and take a look. So what you need to do is check one or both of these boxes, and I want to be clear about what these boxes are for. So the first box is the user experience of the application itself. So we've changed some things, and I'll show it to you in just a second. You can use this application and expect that it will not make changes to the models that you open and save, because nothing in this Quantrix Labs in the top section here will change the existing matrices and assets that are in your models. Now then, the second box here, we've actually made changes to some of the defaults and a lot of different formatting changes to the matrix itself, some of in addition to the changes to the application that surrounds it. And so if you check this box and restart Quantrix, then when you make new matrices, you'll get the new formats, and when you save them, they will persist. So in general, this is a not yet released version of Quantrix, or piece of Quantrix. So we would recommend that you not use this for production models, but it's fairly safe, I would say, because most of it is cosmetic, but we don't want you to be making changes to applications that you count on and wondering why they change how they look when you open them again. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and it tells me that I need to restart the application, which I will do. Close this. Probably need to exit full screen mode and then start Quantrix again. Here we are. By the way, I hope you're seeing my full screen. Is everybody seeing the new Quantrix now? I didn't just share PowerPoint. Are you with me?
Yep, looks good.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so what I want to do first here is give you a little guided tour, but what I'm going to do first is open up an application that I previously saved called New UX Model, and we'll maximize this one. Okay, so if you're familiar with Quantrix, you will recognize that a lot has changed. And I want to emphasize that we are not done. In fact, I just downloaded this latest version about 15 minutes before the conference started, because we are very, very rapidly, we had to do some infrastructure changes earlier in the year to accommodate this, but now we're very, very rapidly iterating on the look and feel of the application, and it's a good time to be providing your feedback. So a few things that I'll say about the new Quantrix look and feel. One of the goals of the new user experience is to get the application itself out of your way and to feature the models that you're building more prominently. So as you can see here, we've got a simple matrix. This is our classic kind of forecast and growth rates matrix. Our classic matrix here, we've got some growth rates here. You can see that we've got a lighter weight, easier to read font. It's less scrunched up. We've actually increased the column widths a little bit, increased the row heights a little bit. We've benchmarked against Excel and Google Sheets and other applications, and we're getting closer to, we're somewhere in between both of them, I would say, in terms of these settings that you're seeing here. Obviously, there is a very striking lack of lines and drop shadows and so on. Historically, applications took the so-called skeuomorphic approach, meaning there was a lot of attention to drawing things on the screen that looked more like real life. In more recent times, people have taken a more flat approach, of which this is a pretty good example, where we've eliminated as many of the lines really as we could that in some ways distract from the experience, and focused you in on what the model is that you're looking into and the tasks that you're trying to yourself perform. Having said that, part of our process here was to basically go as far as we could go with removing a lot of distractions, and then more than likely we'll come back a little bit, adding a few things back in, especially in terms of color, and drawing your attention to particular areas of the screen and so on. So let me just take a couple more steps through here before I run out of time. So we have a matrix here. You'll notice that I have two matrices, and we have tabs on the screen, but they look a little different than historically tabs have looked in Quantrix. So number one is if I hover over the tab, you'll see that we're outlining the particular tab of interest, giving us an indication that we can move this one, for example, to move it over to the other side. If I hover over this other one, you can see that it gives me a gray highlight indicating that I'm able to select it or close it, but this one is still the selected tab, or the one that's on top. Now notice that I can also hover over this area that's not encapsulating a particular tab, and this is actually something that you could always do in Quantrix, but I almost can guarantee you that you never noticed this, because it took me 2.5 years to notice. And even the Quantrix authority, Mr. Rich Lopez himself, who is in the house, when I asked him about this, he said he had never seen it before. So you can actually drag this group of matrices. So for example, if I want to switch the places, I can do so, and I can drag them back. And it's a lot easier to understand that and recognize that, because we're now highlighting the entire object. And by drawing the whole object in white, we're not breaking up the screen quite as much as we were historically. So that's a pretty significant change in terms of the way the tabs work. I want to also draw your attention to the left side. Over here, you can see a whole bunch of icons, and they're new. We have not had icons on the side. We call this the sidebar. You'll also notice a striking lack of menus in the application. And part of the reason is because we are migrating the contents of the menu to the sidebar instead. Now, let me say a couple of words before I go poke at the sidebar a little bit. When I get to the roadmap, I'm going to tell you again that part of the plan here is to reinvent the user experience for Quantrix on the desktop as a preamble, a precursor towards reinventing the experience on cloud, specifically to add modeling capabilities to the cloud. So our intention here was to make the Quantrix modeler in effect look and work more like a web application, so that when we deliver modeling on the web, you get the same experience on the model and the web for modeling. So a lot of web applications these days use a sidebar style of navigation, and so we're dipping our toe, actually we're dipping the whole application in sidebar navigation. So part of the reason is just to be more like web applications, but another reason is that a huge amount of the work that you actually do in Quantrix is done in the what we call tool panes. We all know the model browser, we know the format toolbox. You can see that these have changed in terms of their look and feel a little bit. We're obviously not done here, but they've changed a little bit. We'll also notice, hopefully, that if you're new to Quantrix, or if you're new to this new UX, which everyone will be, you might be wondering, well, what's in this menu, this content menu? Something new with the sidebar menus is that you can actually hover over them now. So it's possible to, especially for something like this files and content menu, which effectively replaces the file menu, and we've augmented that also with a few additional things, such as importing data and so on. I'm not going to get into all the details yet. I don't quite have time. But I can hover over this menu and then just take a kind of one action. So if I want to go open a different model here, I can just hover, click, and open that model. I don't have to dock that sidebar menu, that sidebar tool pane. I can just make a one-click action and then move on with my modeling life. Or if I like, for example, with the model browser here, I can turn it off, maybe turn both of these off, turn them both on, turn it off. So I might want to hover over these as well and just click on the actuals to bring it to the forefront of this matrix here, and then just move away to put it away. So because it's so far tucked into the sidebar, it's unlikely that you're going to be accidentally hovering over these things, but we want to get some of your feedback on this. Okay, so I think I've hit my time limit. I want to just flash back to Quantrix Classic one more time and show you a little bit the A/B difference. And then finally, move back to my slides and finish up with my session, which is feedback. Okay, so as I said, when the 2023 release comes out in just a few weeks and you download it, if you choose to turn on the Quantrix Labs, and we would love you to do that, here's a few questions for you. And we'll communicate with you via bulletins and emails about what we'd be really interested to find out from you, and provide a way to give us that feedback. What's easy? What's hard? Is it hard to find things that you previously knew about? We did actually, I didn't do it, but you can turn the file menu back on if you want to easily with that top button. So we wanted to ask you, like, when do you find yourself going back to that menu versus using the sidebar navigation? Do you like the hover? Is that useful? Or is it just in your way? What about, these one-shot actions versus, say, like with the format toolbox, where you might want to click and back and forth between matrices in the sidebar quite a bit? We've removed quite a few icons from the toolbar. What do you miss? What do you find yourself going, darn, I wish I had that button still there, but it's just gone. Let us know about those things. We want to get that feedback and include it in the new user experience. A few other things here. We removed the formula toolbar. Do you miss that? We're going to be doing some things that I didn't show you yet as well, kind of splitting up some functionality that was formerly in different places and combining it into new places. We'll give you some detailed information about these questions and gather your feedback sometime soon. And lastly, the general aesthetic feedback. Do you like the icons? What do you think about the usability? Do you like the colors? We'd love to get that feedback on board as we are rapidly kind of bringing this thing to a close and iterating on that new user experience.